So I'd like to start off, if my clicker works, kind of. Okay, nothing happens in a vacuum. This is work that I've done with Lyndon Kennedy, who's in the audience science group at Yahoo Labs. Jude Yu, who's now a PhD, was my intern a year ago, and Elizabeth Churchill, who I work with at Seneca. So everyone's always talking to me about big data, left and right, up and down. Everyone's all excited. Data, data, data. Oh my God, it's awesome. And we have a lot of data, and I always liken it. I always liken it to punch cards, because you can take one punch card and you can kind of look at it. First, wait, do you guys know what a punch card is? I'm really not that old either, so it's like, I'm just saying, you take one punch card and you can look at it. Yes, there's some information encoded there. It's absolutely meaningless. And somehow together, in aggregate, in the right order, in the right stack, sent to the right thing, it can kind of make some sense. And big data is kind of the same way, right? It's stuff, you can't fit it on that MacBook, you can't fit it on every MacBook in this room, but it's large enough to where if you can contain it somewhere and kind of run through it in the right way, you can make sense of it. And that's kind of awesome, because it solves a lot of problems. Because when we look at the world, we find that, okay, I'm going to oversimplify things and say, it kind of goes like 1, 2, 3. It's like, you know, you use some social media or web technology, we collect a lot of that information in a cloud store somewhere, and then we run some Hadoop, Pig, ML, R, whatever you want to call it, some big data analysis over it. Okay, now, big data really just thinks about, here's this pile of stuff, and what can we make sense of? I'm actually thinking about these motivations, right? People are using this. People are using tools. People are using Foursquare. People are using Facebook, right? And they have motivations for using them. They're trying to connect with people. They're trying to share certain things. And that leads to this data. If you instrument it right, if you collect it right. And then we can start to now move forward. But if you don't understand what's going on, what are these motivations, you might instrument the wrong thing. You might not even collect the thing, the one thing that you need to simplify all these operations. And that's what I'm going to be talking about for the course of this talk. Till pizza show. I love using this slide. I love this photo because this basically encapsulates all the whole arc of everything I'll be talking about today. This is Dolores Park in 2006, the Sunday before I started work at my first real job at Yahoo, coming out of grad school. 10,000 people have filled this park. I was wedged up in the back of it. Don't we know why they're here? What was going on summer of 2006?
Still trying to find myself in that picture.
Actually, I think you were about over here, actually. So this was the World Cup final. Zidane here had just been ejected from the game. He's kneeling down. Everyone had wedged themselves into the 3,000 people were expected to show up, 10,000 strong in this park. More was actually easy to spot, just in case you're wondering. But and I was thinking to myself, why are all these people here? Why am I here? I can't even see the game. I can't hear it. I can't see it. It's a sunny day. The screen is washed out. I can't get close. But for something media, we like to congregate and experience it together. And this actually stuck in my head as I showed up the next day to work. So we've been sort of told for a very long time that there is this social experience around media. And we can cite a bunch of examples. I'm not going to because we kind of assume everyone's gone to someone's house to watch Super Bowl or Oscars or something. Yeah. Sometimes you reach out in other ways. One of these ways is Twitter. People tend to tweet while they watch TV. This was during a Top Chef season finale. Who here tweets? Who's on Twitter right now? Okay. So this idea of tweeting in TV kind of started with Current TV and the debates of 2008, so 2007 debates for the 2008 election. And this was Chloe Sladden's work. She said, send a tweet with a certain hashtag, we'll run it through some editors, and then we'll push them up to live cable TV. And then they'll tween off, and the tweets will just kind of roll. We see tweets everywhere on TV right now. It's not a big deal. 2008, this was like the first really big, large instance where we saw it actually happening on live TV. 2007. 2008 debates. And so I thought, because I was working on this system at Yahoo Research Berkeley, do these deep annotations into video where you could drop these little things from second 2 to second 5. Here's this note I want to drop on the video. Everyone was working on these things. There's people still working on these things. The idea was one day we'd have enough data by these things. No one uses it, no one cares, right? What ended up happening was this indirect annotation, just to assume that this applies to that piece of media by a timestamp, which is reify it. I thought, oh, I could get some tweets and actually get some volume and do the things I've been trying to do by building all these prototypes in the first place. Okay, this is a very old slide. I keep it around for nostalgia reasons, but at one point people didn't actually know what a tweet was or the structure was, but since you guys all raised your hand, I'm going to assume you know what a retweet is and an @ symbol is and a hashtag is. If you don't, just speak up.
Give us the 1 minute version.
1 minute version. Okay. All right. This is if you're addressing somebody, like @more, and it will ping his phone saying, I mentioned you in a tweet. Hashtags are just basically a way of storing a topic identifier. Retweets, don't worry about it because I don't care for this talk. And then the URLs are the only way to embed rich media. But we're going to focus on @ symbols and hashtags. All right, so using a very crappy Twitter search API in 2007, 2008, I ran a little crawler across 3 hashtags, collected a whopping 3,000 tweets for basically a 3-hour timestamp. Right? It's a lot of data back then. We plotted it aggregate by minute, and we saw this pattern. Now there's this huge spike, right? And we weren't surprised by this spike, and you'll find out later why we weren't surprised by this spike. But really what we saw is here, this is the debate on air, and once the debate was over, there was a huge spike and it went away, coming off the search API crawler. Right. And so I'll tell you why that wasn't so surprising later, but this little clicker is just kind of making me angry and using my finger. So we thought, if that's the post-debate, the somewhat periodic movement here, could these like little markers be post-segment, right? That spike, could it be the end of a, could I ask a question, you answer, you rebuttal, okay, next question, right? So we thought, could that be the case? Quite simply, I like to just take like the easiest, dumbest solution first and see, hey, will this work before I go really complicated with crazy things? So quite simply, we just did Newton's method. And then we said, okay, for a 7.5 minute rolling window, let's find the extrema using Newton's method. And we came up with these little marker points.
So we found the peaks and the valleys in the data.
We found the places where the slope had changed direction over an average moving window. 7.5 minutes, because this is on TV. TV programs are kind of organized in 7.5 minute segments. And so pick that as the window size. We verified this against C-SPAN, which had a running timeline of the debate by topic in question. And we were 92% accurate, plus or minus a minute, just by doing these little slices based on this ebb and flow of conversation in Twitter. Just keep that in mind. We can move forward on that. All right. I don't want to get into social network analysis too much, but we looked at a little social network analysis. This is the mention graph. More mentioned current TV mentioned someone else. We look at this ranked by eigenvector centrality. We find that Barack Obama was the most important figure. Jim Laird, who was the moderator, was second, and John McCain was third. Anyone know what eigenvector centrality is? Anyone know what PageRank is? Okay, eigenvector centrality is like PageRank for people, except actually it's the other way around because PageRank is a variant of eigenvector centrality. Okay. So you can think about it that way. We looked at some text, and I'm just kind of moving quickly here because this is the first study. This is the text coming off of Twitter. This is the text that the people were, the debaters were saying, Barack and McCain. Here, I really wanted a good, strong alignment. Yeah, it just didn't happen. People on Twitter, they don't talk about what they're seeing. They don't repeat it. It's not as descriptive, right? It's reactive. What we saw is, okay, drinking was the #1 term in the first 5 minutes. I'm led to believe there was a drinking game going on. By looking at the tweets, that's what we gathered. And only by looking at the tweets, just so you know. But the LOL, people are keeping score, -5, or ha, you believe that's right? But these are very descriptive terms. These are just reactive terms. So the alignment quite didn't work out just by doing that vector thing. Nick Diakopoulos, who you might know, contacted me. He said, hey, I mean, what about sentiment on that data set? And so we did a little sentiment study. Again, I don't want to get into it too much, but I do want to give a good shout to Nick because he did a lot of this good work. And he basically found out that during a debate, people are just negative. Okay, just forget it. Okay, no one's really positive in a debate. You can see these little meters that they try to put on CNN or something like that. No, everyone's angry and mad and upset. Every now and then they might be happy. And in this case, people were more happy for Obama than McCain, as it turned out, but people are just upset. Hey, fast forward to today. If you go to Yahoo News right now, you can read the Signal, which is coming out of our New York office, by some of the economists over there. And they're doing prediction models, and they did a whole sentiment thing on the Republican debates that are going on, and they presented this work, and they were like, yeah, people are just negative during debates. And I was like, they're still negative during debates. Great. All right, so that was nice. That was clean. Good piece of research, 3,000 tweets. I was like, this is not going to scale. Let's look at the inauguration, okay? Had a different data set this time, something called the data mining feed, which now is superseded by what Twitter calls the garden hose, which is like a constant rate data feed. They just kind of funnel you tweets over time in a push channel. And in 90 minutes, we collected 54,000 tweets, much larger sample. Tried to do that little clippy thing with the Newton's method. Yeah, I remembered that this was a constant data rate feed, and so that's not going to work. Totally flat, because that's what the data set was like. Okay, great. So we started thinking about why is it that people were tweeting more at the end of these topics, or when the debate's over, right? Maybe this is something about to do with attention. You're paying attention when the question is asked, and you kind of like lose attention as sort of people are rambling on about it. Focus in again. Maybe you're not tweeting as much. Right? We thought, what else is like this? If that's the communication signal we're looking for, what else is like this? And we said, oh, the mention is. If I say @more, it's going to buzz his phone and say, more, I'm just mentioning you in a tweet. It's like tapping him on the shoulder. It's interrupting him. It's meaning that I'm going to reach over and talk to him versus comment on what I'm seeing at large. Okay. So it's okay. Let's look at this now, but let's look at, instead of 600 tweets a minute, let's look at this by @ symbols. Let's just count the number of tweets with @ symbols in it. We saw this. Ho ho. All right. It's about 140 on the average across the whole thing, except for these 3 minutes where it drops to like, I think, 29 and then 52 or something like that. Okay, these 3 minutes. This is the swearing in. Hands on the Lincoln Bible. Words are being recited, right? Oh, I don't think there's any space, man. Hands on the Lincoln Bible. Squeeze in however you want. It's good. Make as much noise as possible. It's perfectly fine. All right. Hands on Lincoln Bible, swearing in is going on, okay? Now take a look, we go back, right? There was actually more tweets in this on that minute than anywhere else, right? So we actually had a spike in tweets on that minute. However, there were no tweets, or very few tweets with @ symbols, right? So we said, oh, maybe this is some sort of gauge of importance during this live event, or this use of @ symbols. Maybe it's like that moment in the theater where something funny happens and you kind of gasp or laugh. And then you turn to your friend and you say, hey, that was funny, was that? Or you're going to smile, you can make that little mental bookmark about let's talk about this later. Did you catch the other meme that's hidden in here? Is that what you're laughing at? Okay. Yeah.
Structurally, the inauguration is very different than the debate where there's topics and you're cycling through topics, whereas in an inauguration it's kind of one overall topic with different speakers. So would you really expect to see similar behavior?
Well, there is one major event segmentation in the inauguration, and that is that's swearing in, which is why we saw it only at that one instance. We looked for it because there was a bit of up and down in there. We couldn't really get a good, strong sort of alignment to other things that are happening as the inauguration events are moving. And that's partially because CNN's coverage is different than Fox's coverage, different than ABC's coverage. Everyone's got their camera somewhere else except at that moment of swearing in, where I think we actually saw some convergence. So we expect to see some things. I have another data set which I'll show you that things kind of work a little bit differently, but we're just moving forward here.
Actually, can you move backwards before you move forwards? Can you recap? So at the inauguration moment, more tweets?
We got more tweets in the data feed. For whatever reason, the data feed handed us more tweets, but we had almost no tweets with @ symbols. So we had about 650 tweets on that minute, and about 29 of them only had mentions.
So, are you saying that if there's something very important going on, there are lesser tweets?
I am, and I have an equation that expresses that.
Oh. I'll wait.
Couple of slides from now. But yes, that's what I'm saying. Good observation.
Could it be a data artifact? So there were so many tweets produced, and Twitter is only giving you a sample, then there was still roughly the same concept.
It might be a data artifact as well, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment.
So how long was the inauguration?
Inauguration kind of took place all day. We just grabbed the, it actually happened at noon here. Actually, it was delayed by 3 minutes. And so we just grabbed the window of time around the actual swearing-in ceremony. But it wasn't all day kind of thing. All right, for this data set only, we didn't find this in other data sets, but there was a strong correlation between how long a tweet was and how many @ were actually on that minute. Again, sort of thinking about, are people really distracted and not type so much into their tweet? But this didn't pan out quite well into other events and structures, which speaks to some domains, as you're getting at, some domains would model differently than others. Still wanting to think about topics. I said, with Lyndon Kennedy, actually was like, let's figure this out. Let's think about making a table of contents. We'll do a straightforward TF-IDF kind of term frequency stuff, except what we're gonna do is we're gonna be like overly aggressive, and we're gonna find instances where a term is only mentioned in a 5-minute window, right? We have a hard threshold, as opposed to just doing a normal IDF kind of normalization across the whole set of 5-minute windows. We just got really, really aggressive about it because we want to make a table of contents. We don't just want a term vector that describes everything everyone was saying. We want to know just what's happening that's unique to these slices. Booing because George Bush was leaving the White House, people were booing him. Aretha Franklin singing in a funny hat. They take Bush away in a chopper. The anthem is played. Swearing in kind of is here, and then the ceremony, the speech is here. We talk about remaking America. Pretty straightforward. Not really too much. Now, there's something else that might happen. A tweet might enter. Someone might start talking. A bunch of people might start talking about the same thing. Not at large, but they might just start, oh, hey, that's interesting, blah, 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 blah. And that could carry and continue on and on, because it's not like a thing that everyone's shouting at and pointing at, which sort of slightly, quietly sustains in the conversation. So Lyndon came up with this idea. I'm not going to take credit for it because it's too awesome. And Lyndon came up with this idea that let's look at every term and let's find the maximum occurrence of every term in every window. And then let's compute a ratio of how much does that term occur after the maximum and then before. And then let's look at those terms, meaning a term enters the corpus at a peak, then how much does it sort of continue versus. We saw this. These are the top 2 terms out of the mapped out for the inauguration, messed and flubbed, okay? Which refer to the swearing-in ceremony getting screwed up to some extent. Okay? Notice these scores are 3.5, 2.5. They're not really as high as the other scores that we saw for the table of contents stuff, which is like 0.85, 0.9. These terms are not particularly salient, however you might want to slice them. However, it was the thing that people kept on talking about for days and days and days. And so we have this metric now of finding a table of contents based on these peaks and what's trending, as you might say. We have this other thing about these sort of background whispers, these sustained interest conversation topics that sort of move through the corpus, move through the event. Not particularly cited. We dove into them because if you notice they kind of come and go. And so we dove into them, and like 12:05, people like tweeting, "Oh my God, Obama messed up. He's human." And then later on, in a very Lessig-like call and response sort of manner, people come back replying to those other people saying, "Oh, it was Chief Justice Roberts. It wasn't Obama."
Thank you.
All right. So importance. We thought, okay, how can we actually model the importance and then chattiness here, and then we can sort of plot them out. They become really pretty, and we can see that moment here, moment chattiness went down and the importance went up, right, at the same point. And that's the swearing in bit. Forget what was happening here. Something was going on, but I can't recall. we built a little demo. We said, hey, let's be neat if we could like scrub on a time bar and actually dive into this. If you go to bit.ly/Statler, you can see this little demo and like see how things are sustaining and moving through the corpus as the inauguration plays. I think it's still live actually. Great. So I was talking to my friends at Twitter about this, and they're like, that's really awesome. Could you do that with more tweets? I'm like, yeah, I don't know if it's going to scale. And so Chloe actually says, oh, let me give you 2.4 million tweets on the Video Music Awards. I said, okay, thank you. We did the little thing here. Okay, here they played Thriller, Furtado sang, Perry sang. Great. We said, okay, let's do that sustain thing again, and we got a graph that looked like this for the top two turns that were sort of sustained in the corpus. And again, they weren't particularly salient to the overall corpus. And the blue line is Kanye. The red line is asshole, and I'm assuming by the laughter you all know what's going on. Great. So it's scaled up, which is really nice. And I realized now I was going into this rabbit hole about when will the scaling end. I can sit here and get more and more. We just got access to the fire hose at Yahoo at this point. I'm like, look at all these tweets. Oh my goodness. How far can we go in? When do we want to start looking at things? How does it slice out? Also, we started doing some studies where we realized that the effect data from the API. We saw that there was like a dissimilarity between what the overall set of all things coming off the fire hose was and whatever we could pull from the API, which is about in the order of 25%. So like how definitively can you say, here's what's going on if there is this sort of like strangeness? And we thought for a second, why does that happen? And it turns out to be a platform engineering issue. How you build APIs, and I was started chatting with people about it. I'll talk about that later on.
What do you mean by 26% dissimilar?
I can't really go into the details of this talk for reasons for that number. Just letting you know. Sorry. Okay. So now I'm kind of done talking about Twitter, okay? Kind of done, because like I realized this whole big data thing was going on. I had all these tweets, I was doing all these stats, and my whole life was becoming quantastic, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore. I need to think about that first question again. We'd identified these patterns of communication, of sort of conversation and turn taking and so forth, but I wanted to get down to something deeper, and I'm not going to find that in Twitter. We thought about this as, we started thinking about this problem as substrates. I used to work at NASA way back in the day, and at the Center for Mars Exploration, and we talked about what's on the surface and what's underneath the surface as you sort of dive down through those substrates. Right? And digging in slowly, and what does it reveal, and what can it tell you about that surface artifact that looks really interesting as you went down and down and down. And we thought this is something we ought to be doing. So while we were doing it, this was like, I'm phasing it as one to the other, but these two things were happening concurrently in the research. So we thought about, this is what we want to get at. This is what we want to start to understand. This kind of relationship. These people sharing media and talking, right? Not something you can particularly capture on Twitter, but it's something we want to start to understand. So we need a different mechanism than tweets out in the stratosphere, okay, to understand this interaction. Now keep in mind that this interaction might also look like this interaction. Okay? Really little difference here. Depends on what's connected over here on the other side. Right? Could be tweeting, in the case it's like what we were looking at before, or it could just be Skyping or pinging to one person, staying in contact with one individual. At Yahoo Research Berkeley, Moore remembers because he was probably one of our first testers. We built this little thing called Zinc. If you have Yahoo Messenger for Windows right now, this is built into the client. But this is when it was well, actually this is the new version, yeah. Okay. And what happens is you can, well, I'm just going to show a demo. It's probably easier. Okay, here's this video link was pasted in. You click the button that says watch with me. Video opens up on two people's players. Okay. The other person just paused the video, which actually the other person was me, paused by Hyman here. And I'm typing a message over to Cameron. The video stays in sync across the two people and we share control. So if Cameron rewinds it, mine rewinds. If I pause it, his pauses, and the timestamps stay together. So you can sort of chat and watch. I'm like, oh, cool, is that North Beach? And he's like, I don't know, I don't live in the city, you do. And Mike paused it there. Okay, great. So Cameron now pauses it and he chats the message. Okay, very simple, very straightforward. We built this at back at the Berkeley lab when there were about 100 people using it. We were like running around and high-fiving in the offices. Because we just unleashed it as a third-party prototype because it was the easiest way because I wouldn't have to deal with brand. And it grew and grew and grew, and eventually Messenger was like, we put this inside the actual product. And so we spent about a year productizing it, and now it's distributed across several companies. Now, in its infancy, we started thinking about, we need to measure engagement. But this interaction didn't really exist in 2006. And so what do we need to measure? So we started going through things, and we had this list of everything we want to measure. We don't really have an IRB process. We have these people called lawyers, and they kind of just say, no, you can't do that. And then we just say, why not, please? And then we get to record some stuff. And so we record things that are not content, because content is wiretapping, and we're a company that doesn't do that. Okay? And so type of event, play, pause, rewind, anonymous, irreversible hash, so I don't know that was actually Moore who was there. The URL of the video, timestamp the event, timestamp on the player. Can't record text, but we can record number of characters typed to see how long the message was. The lawyers actually went away for a week and came back to me and told me I was allowed to record emoticons, which I don't really know what that whole discussion was. I would have loved to hear it, but okay. All right, so here's a video that people were watching a lot on the early version of Zinc. We had about, I think, 600 views of this, so 1,200 people, 600 sessions or dyadic sessions. And we started looking at what kind of activity happens through the course of the video's playback time. This is the playback time of the video. Green here is chat, that's what we should be paying attention to. All this other stuff is start, stop, and the red here at the top is like rewind behavior. Okay. A lot of false starts, pausing and playing. As it goes on, people just chat more and more. This is a percentage of activity here on the y-axis. Now, oh yeah, and nobody actually did anything on second 117. It's kind of weird. We look at this by volume and not percentage, we saw something very, very different. We saw a lot of activity, dwindling to almost no activity, and then once the video was over, people sat around and chatted for a very long time. Okay? Not surprising, you chat when you leave the theater, not while you're in the theater. Okay? And we did some qualitative studies, interviews to verify that that was in fact the case. But what became really interesting here is, look right here. And like right here. Just basically here. Not a lot of stuff is happening. And we realized that in this case, the absence of activity was a signal of engagement. Because we still have people in session and there was activity at the end of the video playback. But right here, nothing's happening. And when you think about how we instrument the world, the online world, it's like click-throughs and page views. That's really how everything is instrumented across the board. And if there's no activity happening, you think you've lost the people. But it turns out, in these kind of synchronous shared experiences, that actually is your moment of heightened engagement. That's the moment where you don't want to like pop up, hey, do you want to do something else? Or, hey, you want to look at this ad? Or, hey, you want to watch this other video? You don't want to do that right there. You absolutely don't. Right? So lack of signal can actually mean higher engagement. We saw a fair bit of reciprocity. There was this like gift-giving thing that people were talking about. I shared a video with Ken. Ken wanted to share a video back with me. It happened quite a lot. People felt obligated to hand something back in these synchronous sessions. I'm very curious to see if Google Hangouts has a similar kind of structure. I would assume it does. All right. So then we started thinking about what are people watching? And we figure out what they're watching. And now, the way recommendation works, anyone here works in social recommendation? Kind of, okay. There's one thing that really matters in social recommendation, and that's a score. It could be 5, digits, 5-star rating. It could be off 100. It could be as simple as a thumbs up or a thumbs down, as the Netflix challenge showed us. You just need some bit of information that says user preference, and that's it. And it can literally be just one bit of information. But there's this weird thing that's happening here, which is like there are movies that are well-liked, and then there are movies that are similarly scored, but totally different. Well, the Kung Fu Hustle Rock, in case you haven't seen it. So, and we started thinking about that. And we started thinking about how would you classify and categorize these sort of things, especially in the case of Zinc. So we started looking at the YouTube videos that people were watching in Zinc. And it was stuff like this. Who here knows Double Rainbow? Who here thought it was funny? Just two of you, really? Come on.
Who's not willing to admit?
Who's not willing to admit? Okay, this category, this guy uploaded this under people and blogs, right? That's where he sent it up. And we started looking at all these videos that were being watched, and we started seeing all these sort of things happen that were like the category that was uploaded to was not the perceived genre. Which is kind of what maybe that says slightly more formal. Here's an example.
Online cooking show. Got the Magnum Jack Daniels about to change the game. What you know about cooking? Breakfast. Wake up. Wake the f up. Oh, that's hot. Took some brown sugar. Candy bacon. Delicious. Like dog treats for human beings.
Who here knows Epic Mealtime? Okay, good. Okay. Those of you who know it, what category is this on YouTube? Someone give a shout out guess. Really? No one's gonna guess?
Cooking show.
Okay, it's not under cooking. It's not under comedy. One more. Not under people and blogs. It's under sports. And if you watch it in a fan, you realize why it's under sports. But it could be a cooking show. It could be a comedy show. And when you start thinking about, can we start to do this kind of disambiguation, right? Kind of simply, if comedy is a social construct, and we have this conversation pattern in a synchronous, shared, rather intimate experience over IM, can we use that to figure out what these categories are? So we started out by looking at what we call legacy online video, which is just YouTube, and just trying to see what's here, right? There's ratings, the duration, category, ton of tags, some sharing activity, some comments, you know. And the big data approach would be take all this stuff, shove it up as much data as you can, train some support vector machine, and see what comes out the other side. But we kind of didn't want to do that. We wanted to start with the human perception side first. We wanted to talk to people, see how people perceive things to be funny, either by themselves or when they share them. And then think about what kind of computational model needs to go in, what kind of features do we need to put into the system. So we structure that as these two research questions, which I'm not going to talk about, because I just mentioned. Right. So we start off with a web survey, sort of like pass around the link and email clicky kind. And we handed people a bunch of videos, and we asked them to pick a general category for the video: comedy, entertainment, film, music, you know, or not sure, the video's not working, or whatever. People are not particularly good at this task. They get about 60% right. The comedy videos, they got about 52% right. So that gave us an idea. But then we started realizing, while people were typing in these optional explanations, that they weren't really sure what comedy really meant. So we said, okay, so this is about, I forget how many people, 43 people here. So we said, okay, let's do something bigger on Mechanical Turk. And in this case, we took the videos and we handed it to people, and we said, hey, is this video funny or not funny? And in your opinion, could it be classified as a comedy or not a comedy? And you separate out what you might laugh at and what might be comedy or not. Aggregate everything together, we took a look at it. We saw that there were clearly some things which were really, really funny and clearly not a comedy. And so we dove in to see what those videos were and what the comments were. One of them was there's this baby sitting in a high chair just laughing, giggling. This is a funny video, but I don't think it should be categorized as comedy. And there was this other video, which this is a mother panda sleeping and a baby panda. Baby panda sneezes and the mother panda kind of jumps up like that. And, yeah, it's funny, right? Okay, but it's not specifically a comedy designed to make us laugh. It's just something people call. So from here, we said, okay, let's dive deep. Let's go further into the substrate at this point. And we did 11 one-hour interviews, semi-structured. And we started asking people how they classify things and what they found funny. And the first thing people said is what's on Netflix is way too varied. Oh, not right. What's on YouTube is way too varied, and we don't really know. Films fit in narrow categories. YouTube doesn't. It's just kind of a free-for-all. that becomes difficult. We found that comedy has these internal cues, things people want to call comedy. If there's a laugh track, they would generally call it a comedy. Some signal to them that said that this was produced to be funny. That would be a comedy, but it could not be, might not be funny, right? There's social contexts, and then we started talking people sharing with stuff. You know, if people are interacting with it in a way that makes it funny, makes them believe it's funny, right? There's a lot of studies on this sort of trait. You know, if you're people laughing in the theater, you might actually laugh, down to the smell of popcorn in the theater makes you want popcorn, right? The sort of social cues and environment around you changes perception. And we started thinking about, people started talking about comedy itself as a label. Again, it's proposing that, hey, watch this. You know, if I had this video, watch this video, or say, hey, this is really funny, you should watch this, or this is neat. So you start to change, that interaction sort of changes everything. So it's this sort of social perception, the construction of everything around. And as we were going through these interviews, Jude was doing these interviews, I remembered this.
We live in a society of laws. Why do you think I took in all those police academy movies? For fun? Well, I didn't hear anybody laughing. Did you?
It kind of summed up exactly everything we had just sort of figured out through the studies. The environment around really changes your perception. So now we have this shared environment, Zinc, videos, and your friends, you're chatting, you're interacting, you're manipulating the video, and you're chatting, and that environment could actually be used to disambiguate. All right, so I tried to do first order kind of thing. I come from a hard AI background, and I was like, okay, let's sort of figure this out, first order. Yeah, it just wasn't working, and we said, okay, we're gonna have to dive in and do some machine learning here. The question is, what are we going to look at? I didn't want to look at anything that could be considered content, right? And so we started doing these studies. We did two in parallel, actually. We started looking at just YouTube data and Zinc data, right? Because we want to see how good we do against just looking at the YouTube page and scraping that data information, right? But again, we didn't want content. We didn't want to look at the tag, which is that social indicator, right? Because the tag here, which might say comedy, or funny or whatever in the YouTube tag, that might not apply to the Zinc session, right? Because it could be a soccer match to some people, or it could be a funny soccer match to other people, depending on who you are, right? And so we said, let's do this without anything that could be considered content, trying to think about what Sandy Pentland would call a more so honest signal in this environment here. Although I know Pentland's honest signals are a little bit more biometric, but we see it the same light. Great. So for YouTube, we said, okay, we'll look at the duration of the video, the number of view counts, and that rating, because we know the rating is the key money factor here. And then for Zinc, the duration of the session, not the video, number of play, pause, scrub behaviors, and then how many chats were typed, how chatty were people. Again, we don't know the terms. We don't look at the emoticons, we don't look at any user data, we don't look at any sessions, we don't look at any loads, no comments, no favorites. We're going to look at both of these separately. Great. So, we did it, we put it all together. There's two YouTube features here, and I need to explain that in a second. Random chance guessing on the corpus distribution that's inside of Zinc, you can get about 23% accurate. YouTube features got about 14% accurate. Humans are 60. YouTube features in this case, I'm going to explain it in 1 second, 75% accurate, and then Zinc features are 87% accurate. Why are the two YouTube features listed? Well, we started thinking about that slide. Remember that slide with the 3 movies on it? Right? There are types of movies that are like, get these scores, 95%, 72%, 78%, right? And we started thinking, well, we don't really care to predict a numerical score for the video. We just want to cluster it with videos that are about as good as it. B movies is a class of movies. A lot of B movies, people might really, really like them, right? And so what we did is we took this continuous numerical data and we converted it into factory data. Took interval data, moved it to factory data. Binning, as you might call it. It's very common in machine learning techniques because it does that very thing. And when you do that, it actually gives a bit more freedom to the prediction model to slice and put it in the right space. So for ratings, we bin them. We also binned the Zinc features for duration and like, was this scrubbed a lot or not scrubbed at all? With like a very quite generous bin. There wasn't a lot of them. We just came with very wide buckets to bin all these features into while we constructed this term vector. And we saw this jump in the YouTube data set, the YouTube predictor model from 14% to 75% when you do that binning. Zinc still outperforms it.
What algorithm did you use for classification?
I was just using naive Bayes.
Then, I guess you're assuming that people tag, they want to have accurate tags for their videos, and I'm not sure that that's the incentive of people. Like maybe I would tag it so that it could get watched more.
So when you're sending up to YouTube, that is the case. However, we're trying to figure out these people in session watching this video, what's their perception of it? Because that affects recommendation and that affects advertising. Do we want to give you something funny next to watch, or do we want to give you something sports-like next to watch?
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to build this classifier to disambiguate it in this special case of a shared synchronous session.
And in the empirical studies that you showed before, those tags where you were instructing people to tag the video accurately?
No, the survey ones, we were asking them to tag it, the little web form ones.
Right.
However, the semi-structured interviews, we were talking about getting at those motivations. We didn't actually ask them to label anything in those interviews. It was just our conversation about what are they sharing, how do they share it, how do they perceive it. We didn't ask for anything in particular as like a task, like label this with one of these things. Those were the first two studies we're trying to do. Right, so we thought, what about viral content? Because the genre content's one thing, virality is another. Can we figure out if something's about to go viral or if something's gone viral? And so we said, okay, let's take the same model, we took the same data structure, we took the same data set, and instead of trying to train it against classifications of genre, we said, okay, does this video have more than 10 million views at YouTube? Quite simply, right? Did everyone follow that? Okay. All right. Turns out we can do that very accurately. We can get about 98.5% accurate. Okay. Now let me tell you something. A couple of things you got to know. First of all, there's a bias in the data set. If you just say, no, it's not viral, you will be 90% accurate. Okay? Of course, your F-score will be crap, right? But you'll have no precision. You're just basically guessing, right? Okay? But that is a bias in the data set. So we want to think about this as we've gotten closer and more accurate than just saying, no, it's not viral and moving on. Second thing, not a lot of videos in this data set had a lot of views on Zinc, right? The average video had 10 people watching it. That's 5 sessions. They're dyadic sessions. 5 sessions, 10 people. That was the average video in this data set, right? And off this training data, from that low a number of people interacting with it, we're able to predict if it had over 10 million views over on YouTube, on another site. So viral content is consumed in a very different manner than non-viral content. Yeah?
Wouldn't viral content have a temporal component to it, not just the pure number of page views, but
it would have a temporal component to it, and we're doing a longitudinal study now to figure out if we can predict something's going to go viral as it's sort of like, it's ramping up. So what we had is we just had this static data set. Let's just say, can we see if this is really, really popular off this method? And we're in the process of doing that longitudinal study while we're watching a couple of videos as they increase in view count on YouTube and seeing how that profile of how it's being viewed changes on Zinc. Our hope is that it won't change much. We're hoping the content, the consumption will be rather static and be predictive of this is going to go big versus it changing as it becomes more popular. But we're not sure yet. We're doing that study right now. Good question. Great. Yep.
So what was it that was different in how people were watching viral?
So we did some principal component analysis. We did a bunch of other things. This is where I really don't like machine learning because it's such a black box. The one thing I can tell you is the feature that was almost significantly dominant, but not so significant as to just use it by itself, was the session duration. Okay. People tend to talk about it more after it's done than other content. but it wasn't significant enough to just use it as the sole feature to say, is this, and then, okay. So we needed the neural net, the naive Bayes to push it.
I think what you're saying is, to correct me if I'm wrong, broadly speaking, is that you can identify viral content by looking at how many people talk about it after it's done.
No. Well, kind of. There's a slight dependence thing between these two variables. And I said the session duration, not the number of chats.
Okay, and the session duration, remind me how it's defined.
When someone actually closes that window or loads another video into the Zinc player, then the session duration ends. And that's what that was the dominant feature. We needed to know the volume of chat to push it the rest of the way, right? The number of chats, the number of scrubs, that pushed it the rest of the way. But that one feature was, like I said, it was almost significant, but not enough to report significance. All right, so a couple of things here. None of these techniques were used doing any big data system. Most of them were done off that laptop. If it wasn't off that laptop, it was off a desktop machine with 8 cores and 32 gigs of RAM. So it's still not a cloud structure, right? Again, we're trying to find these patterns, these communication signals. How does it work? How do people talk? How do people interact? Go look for those. And then hopefully we'll know what to instrument, and we'll know what we can predict and analyze, and be informed enough to when we go build the next generation of tools, know what to improve on and what we need to keep instrumenting. Right? Because otherwise you just have a data fingerprint and you have some good scores and you might miss the important thing as you make those future iterations of tools. A couple of things about new directions. Been working with the Flickr people. Flickr has this thing called interestingness and the Explorer. There's a very old school social metric on, finding vibrant and compelling images on the Flickr corpus. We're working with some folks over there to, you laughed at me?
Sorry, you say old school, you mean like 6 years old?
Yeah, it's pretty old school. It is, I've seen the code. As we're thinking about how can we hyper-personalize this? Because like, things that would be interesting to me might not be interesting to you or to you. There might be some intersection, but not. And then also in and out of network information. There's a lot of stuff, places to go. And we're doing this from, again, the qualitative side first, as well as the quantitative component also moving and bringing them together to understand what those recommendations mean. I think you know this, Ken. Been chatting with some folks over at Autodesk because they were thinking about environments and big world experiences and like sensors in buildings. Modern buildings have 40, 50,000 sensors in them, and I met these guys at a conference and they were like interested in this approach and thinking about how could they apply it to what their problem is. Buildings account for 48% of all greenhouse gases, just the operation of those buildings, not the construction of them, okay? Farming is 18%, transportation is 14%. So, buy a Prius, you're only affecting some small bit of greenhouse gases. The buildings are the big thing. So they're wondering, how can they actually think about this as a big data and big environment problem, but understand how people are moving through the space in the building, what are the motivations, what's the ebb and flow, similarly how we've been doing things with the Zinc research and with the Twitter research, and we're hoping to do some collaboration down the road here in the future to see if there's some intersection about big data and big environments and motivations in spaces like this. I have a ton of work I could point you at for just about anything I've said here today and more, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thanks.
To how much of the variance in the personal preferences can you expect? Because I sort of wonder how much of my opinion of a YouTube video depends on which side of the bed I got up that morning.
I suppose I would say there'd be a large variance, and I would say it would not be on which side of the bed you got off with this morning, but rather who you're talking to about it. And that's what we're trying to get at. We actually took these, we took the Zinc models, we started building the recommendation system for it. We started thinking about, okay, the way you share something with Funda might be different than the way you share that same thing with me, right? And there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, that's
but we need to understand that that is fragile and to predict for it.
But there are some activities I do that are highly random and some that are not.
Okay.
I don't have a sense of what this one is.
Oh, I'm not really sure. But there is a fragility in the modeling that we did, and we're looking to actually disambiguate it based on social clusters in the network. Right now, we're not looking at any user information. Because again, we were talking about what's the simplest approach to do this prediction, and will it actually work? And once we have that, we can start adding more layers to it to fine tune it. In the back.
You know how they speak about the herd instinct. So have you found, or are you intent on doing any research on if there's some kind of a critical mass that forms somehow that then catapults the discussion in that direction just because enough people all of a sudden focused on it?
So that's interesting. One issue we have with that is, well, first of all, the Zinc social network, if you just graph out all the users of Zinc, and right now there's about 1 million a month unique on it. If you just graph them out, it's pretty sparse and unconnected. That said, Duncan Watts showed that there was a fair bit of virality and sort of contagion as how things spread through the network, but it was still a sparse network. But it modeled contagion better than like Twitter and some other social media pieces did. But to really get into that herd mentality that you're talking about, the herding mentality, we'd have to sort of cross-correlate that against other properties, which would actually be like we started looking at YouTube, but not so much even the YouTube counts would be an approximation of that, but we need to know those users on Zinc, what was their viewing patterns on YouTube. We don't really own YouTube, we can't cross-correlate cookie data, and so it becomes an investigation that's impossible, right? But that's a good point. Other influences are certainly taking effect. If you saw somebody saying it was funny on Facebook and then you go and share it on Zinc, you know, and then you're primed, right? And it is certainly a dependent thing that's happening, but it's hard for us to track down. Yeah.
You commented on the big data problem, putting things in the cloud, the machines you were using, and also you alluded to using Hadoop, et cetera. Could you comment on just the mechanics of analyzing data this big, and tools and environments that work and that don't work?
Okay, so all this data that like was here, the largest data set is the Zinc data set. And again, we boiled it down to actually run on a commodity machine to do this study, which was part of the goal, because it's hard to really put something in production that's actually tied into a cloud system. You have to do these replications off these cron jobs, you got to get dumps happening, you got to get them coming back. It just becomes a huge stack layer. And so if we can do something without actually hitting the cloud, then that's a lot easier for us to deploy. That said, the work we're doing with Flickr, that was all about putting that stuff into a cloud store and getting that system in place. Towards the actual like mechanics of it, you were asking?
Yeah, just some comments from experiences in doing that.
Some comments. Okay, Hadoop streaming is very interesting. Pig is awesome. I mean, like, I don't know what you want for comments as far as like, you know, aside from that. We do most of the stuff. Most of the stuff we do happens in Pig with a couple of user-defined functions. If it has to get more complicated than that, you might go to Python with the streaming backend. And if it's really, really complicated, we'll just write it in straight up Hadoop, but that is a total pain. But I think that's pretty well known across the industry, though. So, yeah.
In the beginning of your talk, you mentioned a lot about the motivation for the technology.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious your thoughts on, you know, the motivation for the technology versus like the affordances that the technology offers. So how do you make that distinction? How do you know what factors people are contributing to the motivation to use it or share something?
Good question. Many years ago, I wrote a paper, it's right here at the bottom actually, talking about that. And it was really aiming at, we're trying to find semantics. Like a lot of these things, you can think about this talk as like answering questions from classical multimedia research, which is what we were primarily motivated by ourselves. And early on, we realized that the tool can affect the semantics and the interpretation, which then affects the motivations for using it and the patterns of using it. And so as we said, the pragmatics of the tool affects the semantics of the content more than the content itself, right? And it's something we've been pushing on for a while, and we firmly believe in. I was actually called a content antagonist at the last multimedia conference by asking about social systems for doing these sort of predictions and modelings that people were using content systems for, identifying if there's a soccer ball or a pink elephant in the video. And I was like, I don't really care, because what you're trying to do is segment this video, and you can do it off a conversation or some other pattern, which would be a lot easier and more straightforward. So yeah, that's a good question. There's a strong alignment, and you have to be careful. Zinc, well, we did some studies with it. We did some interviews. I said it was a very intimate sort of relationship. Most of the heavy users of Zinc are brothers and sisters, husbands and wives, brothers and friends separated by just 2 college kids that lived too far to go to each other's house every day and watch Japanime, right? And they were just using Zinc all the time to share Japanime videos with each other. And so that was the sort of relationships we saw, which then, biases everything that we can sample and study and predict off of. So it's good to know, because I don't think people have an intimate sharing relationship with YouTube. They might have a posting one, but not that connected experience, which is what we see the reciprocity coming into play. So yeah, you're pointing at a very richer and more complicated picture, and we're aware of that. And we hope to use that, more effectively, because those are the experiences that are really compelling.
Time for a question and a half. Someone have a half because I have a question. So, I guess my question is, you also, machine learning is essentially the art of picking the features, right? So you look at any data set, and you pick some of the features that you can abstract or compute or whatever, or you think are important, and you throw it, you do throw it into the...
I would say people pick all the features and throw it through as many things as possible. I mean, that's the sort of data approach. As many features as you can possibly handle. The only reason why you would start to, from the standard machine learning approach, remove features is that you don't have the computational power for it.
Even if they do that, there's always a second stage, right, of refinement, where we can choose the feature, they can run it again, they can say, okay, we think this will make sense. They have a better model of going on. So I think that my question is not, are you suggesting a new theoretical procedure to approach any machine learning problem, or you think what you're suggesting only applies to the type of content that you're
So when I've chatted with other machine learning people about this approach and they've seen this work, most of them have been in favor of the approach. And the general comment is, I wish I had the time to look at the features as deeply. Because most of the time it's time consuming, it's expensive to do these sort of go through and do qualitative studies. Even 11 1-hour interviews is time consuming and expensive, right? And so for the average person, just running it through the support vector machine in a couple iterations to find combinatorics of features and get an answer out that way, that works. But then they're not at the point to where they're so well informed about what was actually feeding into that, what actually needs to be recorded in the next tool you make versus, well, we just kind of had this already. And so the analysis and the method seems well liked, but I don't think it'll be particularly tractable for economics reasons and time reasons. But we like to spend time doing it. Yeah.
quick one?
Just wondering, why would you necessarily, you were saying how it's difficult to classify, categorize materials on YouTube, right? But just as a very basic question, why would you necessarily want to do that in this context? Why not simply, let's say, in real time, give people whatever the frequencies of other connections or other videos viewed are, just in real time update the data and just make it available on a streaming basis to the users. That's the best you can give them.
So there are other methods of doing this approach. We were actually really interested in this idea of disambiguation, right? This is a sports video, but it's actually funny. And we wanted to do that based on, and train for that based on that social exchange between two individuals. One other route to do that is like what you're talking about is like, look at viewing patterns, do suggestions, see which ones are getting clicked on based on what video they were watching or videos they were watching before, and you become sort of like this sort of collaborative filtering or more sort of straightforward sort of community systems and database work. The Yahoo homepage is actually powered that way, the customization on it, so it's not a bad approach, but we actually were thinking about doing disambiguation of the video type And so we went this other route.
Obviously, you feel that your approach is superior to that. Why do you think yours is more likely to be effective?
I wouldn't say it's superior. I wouldn't say it's superior. I would just say it brings other insights.
Oh.
And for us, those other insights were around the consumption experience of that video piece itself, where you wouldn't get that through the other ones. You would know what people like to watch after they watched this, but it wouldn't really give you a good sense of what it was to just watch.
Ah, I see.
Before we go away, there's a sign-in sheet if you're in the seminar and haven't signed in.
Do I have to sign
There's pizza outside, and let's thank Aaron once again.
Thank you very much.